Hello and welcome. My name is Stefan Poschik from CHC Corporate Health Consulting, and you are listening to our newest CHC expert interview series. So today I have a really interesting guest, and I was so looking forward to talk to him because he will tell us a little bit about thought leaders, about strategy, about being occupied by stuff versus being productive and successful. And I'm, with no further ado, hello and welcome, Peter. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited about the opportunity to be on today. So my name is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO at Thought Leadership Leverage, which is a consulting firm that works with authors, thought leaders, consultants, academics, as well as organizations on their thought leadership. And I'm also the host of a podcast, which is called Leveraging Thought Leadership. That's coming up on 550 episodes, 6 years on. So go check that out if you'd like on Spotify, iTunes, etc.
Wow, that's awesome. So let's jump right into it. A thought leader, what is a thought leader, and especially where is the difference to an expert?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, and I think a thought leader is a type of expert, right? So lots of people might have expertise in whatever their specific field is. You're a doctor, you're clearly an expert. You're a dentist, you're an expert in teeth, etc. But it doesn't make you a thought leader. So in my view, when you look at that, I think there's two parts of being a thought leader. Number one is thought, right? That's why we put that part first. So it means that you've put energy and thought, right? It's not just cut and paste and copying, whatever. That could be in an academic context where you've researched something or some things for a long period of time. It could be in the context of application, like, hey, when I was a CEO, this is the way that we did things. It could be in the context of an advisor or a consultant. This is the frameworks that I use, right? And I've modified them, adjusted them, tweaked them, etc. So that's the thoughtful part, that you're bringing something to the table that when someone looks at that, whether they agree or not, they can say, yeah, it's pretty cool. That's thoughtful. It's not a little quote that you'd see on in a candle shop or something. Like that's not, thought leadership does not belong on a t-shirt per se, right?
Not in a fortune cookie.
Exactly. Then there's the leadership piece. Well, what does that mean? I think this is where you have to have the courage to lead the conversation, to lead the domain, to lead the direction that what you're working on could potentially go to. So most thought leadership is not 1000% original and unique. It's sort of the nothing new under the sun. But what are you doing to add to the conversation, no matter what your space is? What are you doing to sort of acknowledge that those that have come before you and have researched this and done this, and you say, and in my work, what I would add, even if it's just a little bit, even if you think of it as a soup and you're adding just a little bit of seasoning, it changes what was, right? So I think you have to have the courage to do that. And it's okay if not everybody agrees with you. In fact, if everybody agrees with you, you probably haven't done anything new, unique, or worthy of people giving any energy or thought to.
Yeah, no, I really like this definition. Thank you for sharing this. Peter, how important is own experience in this framework? So really experience stuff on my own, went through this specific situation, have been in this situation already. How important is this for this framework?
Yeah, so I believe it's incredibly important. Not everyone might agree, because I think there's one thing for somebody to say, I've researched for 20 years how to lose weight, right? Versus someone else gets up there and says, you know what, in the last 2 years, I lost 50 pounds, whatever, and here's how I did it. So I think when someone could say, some of the greatest thought leadership that I've ever seen and had the privilege to work on has come as an outcome of, hey, wait a minute, you know what? All I really did was codify my operating system as a leader, as a manager, as a whatever. So I can look you in the eye as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and say, when I had to make my first important hire of a non-equity employee, here's the dumb things that I did, and here's what I'm looking for. Because I think if someone can come to you from experience, you have the benefit of learning from the mistakes that they inevitably made.
Yeah. Okay. I totally agree. And I mean, I see so many for I see so many people who misunderstand this concept or something like that. And for me, a personal example is always, okay, a doctor, 40 kilo overweight, smoking like hell, and then he's telling you how to be healthy and have a healthy lifestyle. Yeah. I mean, of course, he will be super experienced when it comes to medical and probably has 10, 20, 30 years of business experience or experience as a doctor. But
Sure.
okay, he's not doing what he can teach you or what he knows. And so, in my opinion, I totally agree with you. This personal experience is extremely valuable to really.
Well, I would even add to that I think for many thought leaders, the genesis of how they became thought leaders in the space they did was really them wrestling with a problem that they had, right? So those are the ones, or something they discovered in therapy possibly, right? But when you think about, well, why does someone become passionate about agility or resilience or like they probably struggled with it at some point, consumed a lot of information, added to the conversation, said, here's how I think is the best way to be more agile, more resilient, to better communicate, whatever the thing is, but they've had a personal transformation that they've then applied in their organization as well, so they can speak to the benefits and the outcomes there.
Yeah, I totally agree again, because when I started my first company, I literally the first 10 years, I failed forward because I had no idea what I was doing. And I did not know that there are mentors around. I did not leverage educational training and things like that. And that was one of the reasons why we created the academy a couple of years ago, because I didn't do it right, or I would love to have an academy when I start, but it was not around. I did not know how to start, basically. Yeah. So
so that's actually the combination of how a thought leader thinks and how an entrepreneur thinks. Like, wow, if this was available for me 10 years ago when I was starting, I would have bought it. I wonder if there's a market for that. Now, not every thought leader thinks in terms of the entrepreneurial market opportunity, et cetera, because there are plenty of things that thought leaders potentially solve that aren't really that much of a problem for enough people to make a business of it, which is a separate conversation.
Okay. Yeah, but it's a great it's a great step to our second question, or to the second question I want to ask. You told me in our previous conversation, when you work with thought leaders, when you support them on their entrepreneurial journey, you start with the strategy. So you do not start with marketing, positioning, sales, and things like that. What I see that most entrepreneurs, especially solopreneurs or in their early stages, they just want to have a new marketing hack. They just want to have a better position. They just want to have a better sales system. So
the problem is, the problem in my view is we're living in a world where we're getting hit with dopamine all day, every day. From everything that we do is this immediate hit, this immediate gratification, bang, bang, right? So everybody thinks like, oh, there's two things I can do. What is the long and painful path to build a viable business that'll take me 8 months and a lot of work or whatever? Or what are the 3 hacks to building a successful business? Well, the article you're probably going to read or the book that you're probably going to buy is the latter, but what you need is the former. So the way we operate is clients come to us in all different stages of the journey and various experiences, et cetera. And many of them want the quick hit. Hey, yeah, I know strategy is good, but give me 3 tips on the marketing that'll change everything. And we just won't do it. We're like, okay, first off, if you had a strategy that was viable and was working, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Most thought leaders, and I would by extension say many entrepreneurs, not all, operate in the absence of a strategy, or with an antiquated strategy, or with, quite frankly, one that just isn't working, but they continue to work it harder and harder, either out of stubbornness or they don't see another way or whatever. So we always say, listen, strategy is a luxury to some degree, but it's a necessity at the same time. So how do you pause and stop what you're doing to take that break to build the strategy, which is the foundation of everything that you need to do as either an entrepreneur and a thought leader? Because the thought leaders that I work with are actually just a type of entrepreneur. The product is an idea.
Yeah. No, I like this. I really like this, because I think we are in an environment for entrepreneurs and in a market environment that we are forced to reinvent ourselves, that we are forced to rethink our strategy. Because when I think back 5 years before COVID, I could do business completely different than I could do business during the COVID years and now after the COVID years. And yeah.
So I think that's a critical point, is that when people come up with a plan, a strategic plan, a marketing plan, an operating plan, or whatever, what they don't do enough of, in my opinion, is say, okay, at this point in time, this is the strategy that I'm developing. And here, and be really explicit, here are the assumptions I'm making about the world, the marketplace, cash flow, whatever. Because sometimes you go back, like if you were to go back now to look at a business plan from 2018, 2019, pre-COVID, and it said, oh, and part of our strategy is we're going to go to 30 conferences to speak and find clients and all that stuff. You'd say, wow, at 2018, 2019, that was pretty smart. And then COVID happened. And then what happened? Then we didn't have any travel. Then okay. So if you're continuing to operate from that antiquated plan, and COVID's an extreme example, at a time where that couldn't be done, that's not going to happen. So I think you have to go back and say, I built this at a point in time based on these assumptions. What assumptions would I make now that are different, have changed? Which ones are wrong? Which ones did I omit? Which ones would I adjust?
Yeah. I 100% agree, because I mean, this was literally one of our strategies, what we had in 2019 for 2020. We planned on launching our franchise system, but we planned it on launching it on live events and on conferences and on booth trade shows and things like that. I basically could take the whole plan and put it in the drawer or in the wastebasket, because it was just not possible. It was not possible to travel. There were no events around. What do you think? Or probably let me frame it differently. I see a lot of people wait way too long before they adapt their strategy or before they come up with a new plan. What do entrepreneurs, or especially thought leaders, need, in your opinion, that they adapt faster?
So I think there's a comfort in sticking with a plan, whether it's working or not. Because you have a routine, you have systems, you have processes, you have tactics. This is what we're going to do, right? This is what the plan says. But if the plan is not getting you the outcomes that you desired, then you have to have more commitment to the outcomes that you thought would happen than to the plan. So again, I think you say, okay, here's the plan. And part of what a good strategy needs to speak to is, well, what happens when? Not exactly, and never, nothing ever works out entirely according to plan. But say, if I was going to do this social media something for 3 months, what are my hopes and intentions? Is it net new client acquisition? Is it elevating the brand? Is it whatever? And put an ROI to that, because that's the other piece of it, is you measure. It's easy to subjectively get emotionally attached to the plan because I wrote it, and if I wrote it, therefore it's an extension of me and it must be great. But if you look at it objectively and say, if I were to know now what I knew 6 months ago when I started the plan, would I still stick to it at the level of rigidity that I do?
Yeah. So when you set up this strategy with thought leaders, are you also talking about KPIs? So what are their lead indicators or most important numbers they have to look at?
Yeah, I think that's different for everybody, right? So I don't think there's a one size fits all for numbers, but I think the challenge is to say, what are the numbers that will give me the data that I need to judge the efficacy of this plan in a non-emotional way. If I were to put this, because as entrepreneurs, we're all too attached to our business because it's for lots of reasons. But if I were to put this out to a good friend or a colleague or someone I trust and say, here's what I did, here's the outcomes I'm getting, here's what I'm continuing to do, tell me what you think. And if 9 out of 10 smart people would say, hey, Stefan, pretty stupid, this isn't working, what are you doing? Right? You need someone to be honest with you.
Yeah, but it's my company. It's my baby. I developed it. It's my idea.
Right. But guess what? There are ugly babies out there. Right. But nobody wants to tell a parent, listen, Stefan, your kid's got, big ears and is cross-eyed and has freckles. It's not going to be a model. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's true. No, I like it. I like it very much. Perfect. Good. Brings me basically to my next question. I want to ask. Also, in our previous conversation, you brought something up which is, in my opinion, very, very important and interesting. So you talked about strategy, productivity versus reactivity. So tell me a little bit more about this. What is important here?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple different things there. One is, in the absence of a strategy, your default mode is to be reactive and not proactive, right? And there's a time and place to be reactive. Listen, serendipity happens, things that we don't plan for happen. And as a good thought leader and as a good entrepreneur, you need to be open to those things and be flexible and be agile. But if you don't have a strategy, all you can react to is things you have no control over, right? So you can't predict and you can't plan. I think the place where most thought leaders get jammed up is they're passionate, they're smart, they're not lazy, but they confuse activity with productivity. So I can continue to do the same thing. You know, from the outside, it could look as if I'm incredibly busy. Wow, oh my God, Peter works 12 hours a day and he doesn't sit. Does he sleep? Like, well, he's busy, busy, busy. That's the wrong question. Is he productive is the better question. Is he getting the outcomes he's looking at, he's looking for relative to the resources he's expending? I don't care if he can do that in 20 minutes or 20 hours, right? So I think, you know, we don't want to sit around and watch daytime television or do all these silly non-productive things. Yeah. But a lot of the activity that we're all doing, quite frankly, is not productive, which means you might as well go sit there and watch Netflix at 2 p.m.
Yeah. Why is this the case? What are your takes on that? So I mean, I have a couple of things. So one of the things what I see a lot of thought leaders come from the corporate world. They are used to 9-to-5 jobs. They need to have their hours, and probably now they could do their job in 2 hours a day, but they feel, oh, I need to do more because I just work 2 hours or something like that.
Yeah, I think there's, I think people like structure. People need structure. I think that some of it might be a work ethic issue that, you know, I have been raised that you work hard, that you do things, that you know, that laziness and sloth is not good. I think there's a lot of reasons. But more importantly, I don't think the reasons matter. I think you have to be a little bit introspective and say, is what I'm doing activity or is it productivity? Is it productive, right? And I think we all have things that we do that are more in the activity bucket that we could reallocate some of that time to productivity bucket and say, what could I do that would be more productive than some of the things that I have been doing?
Okay.
Or continue, because it becomes habit, right?
Yeah.
It becomes a habit. Like people start something, right? Oh, I blog, you know, I post on LinkedIn 5 times a day. It's a habit, right? And eventually they're proud that they stick with it, which is good. You say, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, but if there is no outcome, who cares? Yeah.
Right. And that's what I was going to say is like, let's do a little math here. So if you're doing 5 posts a day, so that takes 3 hours a day, that's 15 hours a week, 60 hours a month. What's the impact of that? Oh, geez, I don't know. Okay, well, that's a big chunk, you know, it's a big chunk of your total time. Wouldn't you want to know that? Yeah. And would you maybe be willing to take a risk and cut that in half and free up that other time to try something you're not doing? Maybe do video, maybe, you know, reach out to more people, whatever. There's lots of other things that you could do.
Yeah. How can somebody start to do an evaluation of his stuff he's doing when he gets the feeling, oh, okay, I'm not really sure if I'm on the right track. Probably I invest too much time in activity and not in productivity.
Yeah, I think a lot of people aren't even aware of what they do and how they do it, right? So if you ever get I think it's on Sundays, I get the thing from Apple that tells me how many hours a day I've been on my phone or on my devices. And I'm like, absolutely not, right? That is impossible, right? But then you think about it like, wait a minute, if I'm on my phone while I'm doing this and doing that and watching a movie or something, I'm like, oh, okay, so there can be more than 24 hours in the day if you're multitasking. So I think the first thing is write down how you think you're spending your time. Not every minute of it. Like I'm not into one of those things, but like how many hours a day am I spending on the business? How many hours a day am I spending on operations, finance, marketing, whatever the functions are? And then spend a couple weeks, you know, just ticking it off. You know, maybe audit your calendar, go back 2 months and print out your calendar and say, geez, I'm in a lot of meetings that I don't even need to be in this meeting. Or what is the purpose of this meeting? Or I talk to a lot of people that are not worthy of my time. So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, basically back to the strategy, yeah, because when I don't know who is my decision maker, who is the person I should talk to get a new client or something like that. Okay, I mean, I can waste hundreds of hours every single month to talk to people, which is not relevant. relevant time.
Yeah, and I think, I just had a conversation with a client earlier today. There's lots of people that you could talk to that you might be helpful to, but what are the subset of those people that are actually in the market for what you have, can afford your services, and are willing to make the investments? Because if you're not talking to those people, that's not going to get you where you need to go. Now, sometimes it's okay to talk to folks that maybe they don't have the budget today or whatever the case is. You're building awareness, and maybe that will pay dividends at some point down the road. But are you talking to the right people at the right time for them to engage in what you have to offer? Because it's about them. It's not about you.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Last question, scaling for thought leaders. So how can a thought leader scale and get probably out of this sometimes rat race that I just exchange time against money when I do coaching or business consulting or even speaking on stage?
Sure. So that's a big piece of our business. And I call that sort of the business transformation side, where someone goes to having what I would call a practice. And the way I define a practice, and it's not a bad thing. Lawyers have practices, doctors have practices, accountants have practices, but you need to be in the room or in the Zoom for ideas and therefore dollars to be exchanged. So there's a function of, in essence, dollars per hours and hours per day, right? So there's a limit to how much money you can make in a practice. A business could take the same intellectual property, the same thought leadership that you are using when you're speaking, when you're consulting, when you're advising, and be generating revenue for you regardless of what you're doing. So it's not that you do one or the other. A practice is usually the place where most businesses start, and then it could evolve. So I would say, as a thought leader, there's so many ways to scale your thought leadership, from licensing to video-based training to masterminds to coaching to, like, it's almost infinite. But are you even aware of what those are? What are the ones that don't require you? How do you even go about selling that, right? Because I think where a lot of thought leaders get bogged down is not in the development of thought leadership. If you can't create thought leadership, you are not a thought leader, period, end of conversation. Stop listening to this podcast, right? But where most thought leaders get jammed up is on the other side, which is that sales, that marketing, the distribution, strategic partners, pricing, procurement, negotiating. That becomes more and more important and less familiar. Because don't forget, thought leaders are usually among the world's best in whatever it is they do. They're not used to having that sort of beginner's mindset and falling off the bike and scuffing their knee. So what do? They just don't do it, right? So I think if you're a thought leader that needs help on that side, get the help that you need. You don't have to face that steep learning curve on how do I become a marketer or do B2B sales or like whatever. There's lots of things that you don't need to master to be a success that other people are really good at, that you should hire, partner with, engage with, whatever.
Oh, that's awesome, Peter. Really, thank you so much for all your insights and for this super valuable information. And I'm sure, I have a bunch of other questions. I'm sure other people also want to connect with you. So what's the best way to reach out to you and connect with you and your services?
Yeah, there's two best ways. One is to wire a large deposit to my corporate account, and you can text me for my bank info. But the second way, which is good too, is you can just email me. It's peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And that's my actual email that actually goes to me. So
okay,
Peter,
that's awesome. I basically like the first approach also very much, but probably you can teach me on how to get this done.
Exactly.
Awesome. No, thank you so much, Peter, again, for your time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, to all of your listeners out there, connect with Peter. You just got so many golden nuggets, and start doing what he just taught you, and you will have a much more successful business. So thank you for that, and talk soon.
Thanks for having me.